Okay, so if you look at the core, it asks us to teach you a specific thing. You've all seen mean, you've all seen median, you've seen mode, you've seen range, okay? Those are all different things that you've seen. One thing that you haven't seen, most of you, is what's called mean absolute deviation. Mean absolute deviation. It's not necessarily an easy topic. It's hard. Well, it's not that hard to understand, but it seems confusing sometimes to people. So I'm going to try to introduce you to it visually before I explain it too much. First of all, you know what mean is. Mean means average, right? We've talked on Khan Academy. You've talked with Mr. Khan about what mean actually, the definition of mean is. It's one of the meanings of average. There are other averages, but we usually, when we're talking about average, we say average. When we're talking about mean, we usually say average. Absolute refers to absolute value. Okay, so let's look at absolute value for a second. All right, and talk about what that means. If you're looking at a number line, for instance, there's a 0, and I am sitting at the number 2, okay, and I ask you a question. How far away is the open dot from this closed dot? How far away is it? Well, one person might say the distance here is 4, and one person might say the distance is -4. The 4 and -4 refer to direction. But truthfully speaking, the distance between those two dots is always going to be 4. There's no real negative about it. When we're talking about absolute value, right here, all we're talking about is a distance from one point to another point. It's always going to be a positive number. All right? Deviation means how far away is it? All right? We want to know how far away something is. So when we're looking for mean absolute deviation, what we're actually looking for is the average distance all of your data points are from a certain place. Mean absolute deviation. Okay? So let me show you what I mean. If I have 5 data points, let's say 2, 5, 7, 13, and 18. Let's pretend, I don't know, let's say that's like Mr. Khan talked about, the amount of experience a group of people have teaching. One teacher has 2 years, one has 5, and so on up to 18 years. If I want to find the average or the mean of that group, I just simply add them together and divide by 5. Let's add them together. 18 plus 13 is 31, plus 7 is 38, plus 5 is 43, plus 2 is 45. So the sum is 45 divided by 5 gives me 9. So I have a mean, and since it's the entire population of people, we're going to pretend it's just a population. We use mu is the mean, which is 9. Well, in many instances, we want to determine how far away these data points are from the mean. All right? For example, I can take 2, subtract 9, this data point right here. 2 minus 9 is a -7. But -7 isn't the distance from the mean. We want the absolute value of -7 to give us that distance, which gives us a distance of 7. So this data point 2 is 7 away from 9, 7 years away from 9. Another way of saying it is that teacher has 7 years to go until that teacher has the experience, 9 years of experience. Next data point is 5 minus 9 gives me a -4 But we want the absolute value of that because that's going to give us our distance from 9, which gives us 4. The next data point is 7. And we're going to just continue on through there and determine each of these distances. And last one. Okay, so we know that the first teacher is 7 points from the average, 7 years from the average. The second teacher is 4 years from the average. The third teacher is 2 years from the average. The fourth teacher is 4 years above the average. And the last teacher is 9 years above the average. But the distances are 7, 4, 2, 4, and 9 respectively. How far each teacher is away from that average. Now, it's interesting, you might go even further and say, hey, well, what's actually the average of these distances? Well, how do you find an average? Well, you add the numbers together and divide by the number of data points. So, 7 plus 4 is 11, plus 2 is 13, plus 4 is 17, plus 9 is 26. So if I add all those pieces together, I get 26. Okay? I'm sorry, I had this thing a little bit off. If I add all these differences together, I get 26. And then I need to divide that by 5. And 26 divided by 5 equals 5, remainder 1, and 1/5, which is the same thing as 5.2. Okay? This right here is the mean absolute deviation. Spell that again. Deviation. Meaning the average distance that each of these data points is away from the mean is 5.2. The average distance they are away from the average distance they are away from the average is 5.2. Mean absolute deviation. How far away, on average, each data point is from the mean.